AI has rapidly evolved into a powerful partner that can write documents, create designs, develop software, and support our daily work. At the same time, however, new challenges have emerged: hallucinations, bias and unfairness, inconsistent outputs, and concerns about safety. These are not simply AI mistakes. We believe they should be understood as issues of AI quality. In manufacturing industries such as semiconductor and automotive production, reliable products are created by measuring defects, analyzing their causes, and designing for quality. Should AI be approached in the same way? To answer that question, let's first look at how manufacturing has traditionally defined and achieved quality. In manufacturing, when the goal is to build a great product, the very first step is not to start manufacturing. Instead, it begins by clearly defining what counts as a defective product: a product with scratches, a component that falls outside dimensional specifications, or one that fails to meet performance standards. Once defects are clearly defined, they can be measured, inspected, managed, and continuously improved. In other words, the foundation of quality management is not creating good products, it is defining defective ones. So, what happens when we apply this same principle to AI? What question should we be asking? AI also learns from knowledge, understands situations, makes decisions, generates text, offers recommendations, and takes actions. If we believe that AI has quality, then, just as in manufacturing, we must first define what a defective product is. But what is a defective AI? Is it an AI that gives incorrect answers? An AI that produces results different from what we expected? Or an AI that makes decisions that could cause harm to people? To answer these questions, we first need to ask what AI actually produces. Unlike a factory, AI does not manufacture physical products. What AI produces is something far more important: decisions that are used in society. We often think of AI as a system that generates text, but in reality, that is not what AI fundamentally produces. At its core, AI is a factory that generates decisions at scale. In recommendation systems, it decides what to recommend. In finance, it decides whether to approve a loan. In cybersecurity, it decides whether an activity is fraudulent. In healthcare, it helps determine the most appropriate diagnosis or treatment. In advertising, it decides what content should be delivered, and to whom. Across every sector of society, AI continuously produces an enormous number of decisions, instantly and at scale. That means the quality of AI is not simply the quality of its text, it is the quality of the decisions it produces. And just as a factory that manufactures millions of products inevitably produces defective ones, an AI system that generates millions of decisions will inevitably produce defective decisions as well. In manufacturing, no matter how advanced the production equipment is, achieving zero defects is impossible. That is why quality management focuses on measuring defects, analyzing their causes, and continuously improving the process. The same principle applies to AI. Every day, AI systems generate millions, even tens of millions, of decisions. Not every one of those decisions will be correct. Some create value and build trust, others lack sufficient accuracy, and some are simply wrong. Even more challenging are the invisible defects, decisions that appear correct at first glance but contain hidden bias, unfairness, or critical omissions. In other words, AI has a yield rate, just like a manufacturing process. The goal is not to eliminate every defect. The real challenge is to define what counts as a defect. Only then can quality be measured, managed, and continuously improved. So, what kinds of decisions should we consider defective in AI? When we think of defects in AI, we often think of hallucinations or incorrect answers. But that is not the real issue. The most important question is whether an AI's decision can actually function in society. AI generates decisions based on data and models, but those decisions are ultimately judged within the context of social rules, ethics, values, laws, and the specific situation in which they are made. Even if a decision is technically correct, if it is not accepted by people or society, it creates no real value. We consider such decisions to be defective AI outputs. In other words, a defective AI decision is one that cannot be accepted or sustained in society. There are several types of such defects. The first, and the most fundamental, is incorrect judgment. An incorrect judgment occurs when AI produces a decision that differs from the one that should have been made. AI makes decisions based on the data it receives. But if the model is not accurate enough, it can produce incorrect results. There are many possible reasons. The training data may be insufficient. The data may be biased. The features may not be well designed. Or the model itself may have inherent limitations. Because of these factors, AI can fail to make the right decision. For example, it may reject an application that should have been approved. It may classify normal network traffic as a cyber attack. Or it may fail to detect a serious disease. In many cases, these types of errors can be reduced by improving the model and the quality of the training data. This is the most fundamental quality issue in AI engineering, and one that has been studied in machine learning for many years. However, there is another class of problems that cannot be solved simply by making the model more accurate. Sometimes, AI makes decisions that it should never have been allowed to make in the first place. AI is meant to make decisions only within the scope that humans have entrusted to it. In reality, however, AI sometimes goes beyond that scope. It may make decisions in areas it was never trained for, in domains governed by laws or ethics, or in situations where the final decision should always belong to a human. The key question is not whether the decision is correct. The real question is whether AI should have been making that decision in the first place. That is a quality issue. Even if an AI happens to reach the correct conclusion, if it crosses a boundary it was never meant to cross, it cannot be considered a high-quality AI system. We refer to this type of defect as a boundary violation. Which decisions should be delegated to AI? Which decisions must remain in human hands? Which areas are restricted by law or ethics? And which decisions require accountability and explanation? Defining these boundaries is one of the most important aspects of AI quality engineering. So, what role do these boundaries play within an AI system? A boundary is more than just a collection of rules. It is the final quality gate that determines whether an AI's decision is ready to enter society. Even after AI generates a decision, that decision should not be executed automatically. Is it trustworthy? Is it ethically acceptable? Does it comply with laws and regulations? Does it require final approval from a human? A boundary evaluates every AI decision from these perspectives. Only the decisions that pass the boundary are allowed to be put into action. In other words, a boundary is not a mechanism for restricting AI. It is a quality assurance system that ensures only trusted decisions are released into society. But passing the boundary is not enough. If a decision is questioned later, and we cannot explain why it was made, then the AI cannot truly be trusted. AI can produce decisions, but that does not necessarily mean it can explain why those decisions were made. Why did it reach this conclusion? What data was used as evidence? Which rules or knowledge guided the decision? If these questions cannot be answered, the decision cannot be verified, and it cannot be improved. When problems occur, it also becomes difficult to identify the cause or determine who is accountable. We consider this type of defect to be an unexplainable decision. What matters is not simply that AI can produce an answer. What matters is that we can trace the process that led to that answer. That is the purpose of explainability. But explanation alone is not enough. To continuously improve quality, we must be able to reconstruct how a decision was made, even after the fact. That is where the concept of decision trace becomes essential. Decision trace is not a record of the decision itself. It is a record of the entire process that led to that decision. It captures when and where the decision was made, who was involved, what the situation was, what data was provided, what decision was reached, which rules, knowledge, or reasoning guided that decision, and what actions were taken as a result. By recording this complete sequence, we can later answer important questions. Why was this decision made? Where did the problem occur? And how can we improve it? In manufacturing, when a defective product is discovered, engineers trace its production history to identify the root cause. AI should work the same way. To improve quality, we need a history of decisions. With decision trace, we can provide accountability, detect errors, continuously learn, strengthen governance, and build trust in AI systems. In other words, AI quality engineering is not simply about detecting defects. It is about understanding the structural causes of those defects and continuously improving the system over time. As we have seen, AI defects are not all the same. Each type of defect has a different cause. The first is wrong decisions. Their primary cause is the model. The second is illegal decisions. Their primary cause is the boundary. The third is untraceable decisions. Their primary cause is the trace. In other words, AI quality engineering is the discipline of designing these three essential elements: model, boundary, and trace, to continuously reduce AI defects. But the goal of quality engineering is not simply to classify different types of defects. Its ultimate purpose is to reduce defective decisions and increase the number of good ones. This brings us to another important concept, one that has long been used in manufacturing: yield. In manufacturing, yield is the metric used to measure how many of the products produced are actually good products. We can think about AI in exactly the same way. Every day, AI generates an enormous number of decisions, but not every one of those decisions will be accepted by society. Imagine that out of 100 decisions, 95 are considered good decisions, while 5 are defective because they are incorrect, violate established boundaries, or cannot be explained. In that case, the AI's yield is 95%. The goal of AI quality engineering is to continuously increase the proportion of good decisions. But can we improve that yield simply by building a better model? The answer is no. When people think about improving AI yield, the first idea is usually to build a better model. And of course, improving the model is important. By increasing the amount of training data, refining algorithms, and improving accuracy, we can certainly reduce incorrect decisions. But that alone is not enough. No matter how accurate the model becomes, if AI is allowed to make decisions that it should never make, the overall quality will not improve. That is why we need boundaries. Boundaries define the scope of decisions that AI is allowed to make. They ensure that decisions are governed by laws, ethics, social rules, and, when necessary, final human approval. Furthermore, to continuously improve quality, we must record decisions, analyze their causes, and use decision trace to drive ongoing improvement. In other words, AI quality engineering is about designing three essential elements in balance: model, boundary, and decision trace. Together, they enable the continuous improvement of AI yield. But how does this approach connect to the principles of traditional quality engineering? In fact, this way of thinking is not new. For decades, the semiconductor industry and manufacturing have built systems designed to continuously improve quality. Products are inspected, defects are identified, the results are recorded, and yield is continuously improved. This cycle of quality improvement is what has made today's highly reliable products possible. AI is fundamentally no different. In AI systems, boundary serves as the inspection process. Rather than allowing every AI decision to be executed automatically, it ensures that only decisions suitable for society are allowed to proceed. And the equivalent of a manufacturing production record is decision trace. By recording the reasoning and the process behind every decision, it enables accountability, root cause analysis, and continuous improvement. In other words, just as semiconductor manufacturing has improved quality through inspection and increased yield, AI can improve the quality of its decisions, and the trust it earns from society, through boundary and decision trace. At this point, the true nature of AI system design begins to emerge. We believe that designing an AI system is about far more than simply deploying a high-performance model. AI receives input, makes decisions, and sends those decisions into society. But the most important questions are these: which decisions should AI be allowed to make? Which decisions should be stopped as defective? And how should those decisions be recorded and improved over time? These are the three elements that must be designed. The most important question in AI system design is not, which model should we use? It is, what should be defined as a failed decision? Where should AI be required to stop? And how should every decision be recorded? Only systems that can answer these three questions can become AI systems that society truly trusts. In other words, AI system design is not about designing performance. It is about designing quality. As we have seen, an AI system is far more than just a model. The model learns knowledge, generates decisions, boundary evaluates those decisions against the rules, values, and expectations of society, and decision trace records the reasoning and process behind every decision. Through this continuous cycle, quality improves, and trust is built. In other words, trust does not come from the model itself. Trust comes from quality. The future of AI is not about building ever larger models, Nor is it simply about making inference faster. It is about designing systems that can continuously produce decisions that society can trust and accept. That will be the defining challenge of the next generation of AI systems. We believe AI is entering a new era, moving from a model-centric era to an era of quality engineering. We begin by defining defects. We stop defective decisions with boundary. We learn from every decision through decision trace. By continuously repeating this cycle, AI can finally become a technology that society truly trusts. The future of AI is quality engineering. It is about designing the quality that enables AI to continuously produce decisions that society can rely on. That is the vision of AI quality engineering that we propose. Thank you for watching.